So welcome to the third video we've done in this series. We're calling the Skills Live, skill being an acronym for sharing knowledge of independence, learning, and living. And today we are having Craig Caudill. Craig Caudill is the founder, owner, proprietor of Nature Reliance School. It's a survival outdoor self-reliance school, so it's right up our alley. You can find out more at naturereliance.org. Craig's also wrote several books on the subject matter, especially outdoor skills, and so he is a great resource to be able to tap. And in particular, today what we're going to talk about is the 4 puzzle pieces of survival. This is, I think, a Craigism. I think this is an original idea of Craig, and so he's going to be going through that. Now, if you have any questions during this, we're streaming this on both Facebook and Zoom. If you have any questions for Craig during the time, you can put those in the chat of Zoom, and just make sure you say it to chat to everyone, and we'll be monitoring that and pushing that over to Craig. Same thing goes for Facebook. If you have any questions, or if you just want to discuss stuff, you can also do that in the comments section on Facebook, and we will be pushing those over to Craig. Without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Craig. And if I missed anything, Craig, as far as any other ways to keep in contact with you, or any other parts of your business and personality and other things that you're involved in, you can kind of introduce yourself more. But without further ado, Craig.
No, that's real good, Dustin. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, the best way to connect with all that we do is the website, naturereliance.org. That's the home for everything. You can find all of our social media links there, as well as my blogs, podcasts, and all that kind of good stuff right there. The only thing that I would slightly disagree with is that this 4 puzzle pieces of survival is not an original concept of mine. It's actually a concept that's rather old. The military has variations of the idea of mindset, skills, tactics, and gear. And I have simply ripped off that uncopyrighted material and have been applying that to survival training for a long time now. And so I'm a big fan of trying to get across the idea that it's not what typically happens in our community, survival community in particular, is people focus on 2 things. They focus on survival skills, which is fire building, setting up shelters, and that sort of thing. And they focus on gear. And so what I did several years ago when I wrote my first book was I had this in the back of my mind that it was true, but I have a degree in statistics, so I have a statistical mindset in everything I do. So what I did is I collected a bunch of statistics on how people actually died in the outdoors. I actually had 200 stories that I put together for book 1, and tried to find the commonalities between the way people either died or experienced severe trauma or problems in the outdoors, and then wrote a book to fix those problems. And the thing that kept coming up over and over and over again is 2 things that get missed, in my opinion. It gets missed is the mindset, building your mindset, bulletproofing your mind, and 2, communication and team building skills. Basically the ability to communicate effectively with others, be a good leader. And so that's what I throw into the tactics portion of mindset, skills, tactics, and gear.
Right on. Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that nothing ever is invented originally. It all comes from something. But these are kind of your original ideas, at least these 4, and the way that you've patterned them is your way of organizing the information. So for the rest of this, we might interrupt you if there's a pause or something, but I'll just let you kind of run through your gamut of how to describe it, and then I'll just kind of leave you alone.
Okay, good. And make sure anybody has questions, throw them at me, because I'm happy to answer it. Tell everybody out there that's listening to feel free to interrupt me at any time. They give me an opportunity to get something to drink anyway. So
Will do.
So yeah, mindset, skills, tactics, and gear, what I call the 4 puzzle pieces of survival, is the building blocks of having a good ability to take care of yourself. Now, when I first started teaching what is normally called survival, I actually had quite a bit of trouble with calling it survival. Reason being, I grew up doing the things that I now teach as survival, and that I see most everybody else teaching as survival, just doing these things for fun. and literally, particularly as it relates to wilderness survival, which is, basically knowing how to be self-reliant, how to have a calm, cool head when you're in the outdoors, make proper decisions, do the things that you need to do when you're in the outdoors so that you don't get in trouble in the first place. Today in our world, it seems like in our world being the survival industry, the survival world, community of people, which, by the way, in my opinion, are mostly really great, down-to-earth, wonderful people, is that we tend to have the desire to look at the exception, not the rule. And what I mean by that from a statistics perspective is that we look at the people that make mistakes, they are the exception. Why do we not spend as much time looking at the people that go into the outdoors, for example, and come back, have a great time, and don't experience any trouble at all? And so what did they do right? And how do I, as a person that runs a school and writes books and has a YouTube channel and podcasts and everything, how do I instruct people to be that person rather than only focus on the people that make mistakes? And so without a doubt, we've got to be prepared for those mistakes. We have to be prepared for the outlier. We have to be able to creatively adapt, improvise, and overcome, to steal another concept from the United States military. We have to be able to do that when we're thrust in situations where we have to deal with something that was unplanned. But at the same time, there's millions of people that do things every day and survive. I'm one of them, you're one of them, everybody here right now is one of them. So how do we teach people to continue to do that? The thought being, from a mindset perspective and an emotional perspective, is I want everybody to live life to the fullest all the time. Just live it up. Situational awareness is a perfect example of that. And this is a big part of the mindset part of mindset, skills, tactics, and gear, is that if I can teach our students and those who to follow what I do good situational awareness, then they're obviously more aware of what's going on around them at any time. And because of that, the beauty of it is that they experience life more as full as they possibly can. And by living that way, then they're seeing more things that are going on around them, because most of what is taught in survival is a reactionary measure. And what I tend to do is try to focus people on how to be proactive in their approach to survival. And that's, again, why, as far as these 4 puzzle pieces are concerned: bulletproof mind, skills, tactics, and gear. So that is a little bit down the trail of looking at mindset. Now, to go a step further, then I think what needs to be focused on is that if we understand ourselves physically, we understand our brains and how we work physiologically, then it's going to be beneficial. And I'm not saying we have to keep all this in mind for survival, but if we can discuss it here today and understand this is how we work, then we can utilize what it is that we already know about ourselves. And this is what we know. We have what's referred to as the reptilian, or what's commonly called the lizard brain. We have the limbic system of the brain, and we have the neocortex. These are 3 distinct portions of the brain that help us make decisions and do things. The lizard brain is what just keeps us alive. The physical things that happen, our heart beating, our blood pressure being where it is, our arms functioning the way they do. Those are things that happen very naturally as far as we as if we look at ourselves just as an animal. That's what the reptilian brain does. The limbic system of the brain is where we started adding in our history as a species. We started adding in emotions, and that's good. And that's one of the things that makes us human. But what that also does is that, for example, if I was only a reptilian brain species of animal, and my wife is in front of a bus and there's a bus bearing down on her, I just watch her get mowed over, and I'm not going to do that. My emotions can take over. I can get excited about that. But what I need to do as a survival person that's minded in survival is I need to know how to stay in control of that. Okay. And that's why I I borrow a lot of what I teach from military mindset. And the reason I say that is because, in my perspective, and a lot of people disagree with me, and we all have different opinions, and that's a wonderful thing about how we do things in this work, in this community, is that, The United States military is probably one of the world's best at teaching people how to do intricate, both gross and fine motor skills movements under stress. And so falling down is a gross motor movement. We can fall down, and when we fall down, we throw our hands up to protect our head, or we put an arm out to protect our head. That's built into us. That's part of that lizard brain. But being able to build a fire where we might manipulate the starting mechanism on a lighter, for example, that requires fine motor skill. If we're under stress, then all that crap goes out the window, fine motor skills. The more that we train ourselves under stress, then the better we are at manipulating things that require fine motor skills. So, well, what's a fine motor skill? Well, if it's on a firearm, that might be the safety on that firearm as you bring up a firearm to defend yourself. That might be that lighter. That might be you being able to tie knots properly so you can build a shelter. These are all fine motor skills. And under stress, we do not, as a species, as an animal, if you will, we do not do very well at doing those things when we're under stress. The way we combat that with mindset, and this is where the neocortex comes in of our brain, or the thinking part of our brain allows us and makes us, in my opinion, a more advanced species of animal, which gives us a cerebral thought and allows us to appreciate art and appreciate technology like we're utilizing here today to talk to people all over the place. It's really fantastic. These are the kind of things that when we understand that we have that ability, we have to build what I call highways from the reptilian brain through the limbic system into the neocortex so that we can all be able to do that. So those are called neural pathways. Now, I've said all that for this. The way you do a better job at doing those things is learn how to do things under stress. So it doesn't matter what that stress is. A perfect example of purposely putting yourself in stress every day is exercise. It's a lot easier for us to sit our butts down on a couch and eat Cheetos and watch, Waco on Netflix, right? I mean, that's what a lot of us are doing right now. But it's harder for us to get up off the couch and go and exercise. That is stress in and of itself. And so by stressing ourselves with something that's actually really good for us, we basically, it's like a construction crew that's building these neural pathways through our brain that teaches the reptilian brain how to connect to the neocortex so that we can make decisions while we're under stress. Once we do that with exercise, once we do that, for example, yesterday I know how to build fire in the rain, okay? But yesterday I went and built fire in the rain because, I teach people how to do that. So I'm constantly putting myself in positions of stress and doing skills such that it's what I call my students in class, just a thing, you all. It's just a thing. Stress is just a thing. Work through it. You'll be all right. It's not something that we allow ourselves to get too focused on, because when we do, we can't make clear and conscious decisions. So we have to be able to make those decisions under stress. And the way we do that is we start building our mindset, bulletproofing our mind.
So,
Now,
Craig,
yeah,
we got a question from Jim Cobb. And when it comes to what we might call traditional survival education and training, would you say that the mindset is the most overlooked of your 4 pillars?
Yeah, Jim Cobb. First off, pick up Jim Cobb's books. The dude's the bomb diggity. I love Jim Cobb. Jim Cobb, I would call him a mentor, although he probably wouldn't accept that title. But Jim Cobb's super guy. He knows the answer to this, but I'm glad he asked it. Yes, without a doubt, survival mindset is probably the most overlooked. Now, here's the funny thing about it, is that you'll see your typical survival instructor, your survival author, writer, talk about how important mindset is. But nobody ever takes the time to teach people how to bulletproof their mind. That's the hard part. And I'll admit, it's very hard to do. If I, as an instructor, 1 month, I might be training Army Special Forces, right? That's a whole different group of people than when I train average ordinary people like me and you that are just lovers of the outdoors, for example, or bushcrafters or whatever. That's a different mindset. And so somebody like me that's responsible for bulletproofing people's minds on both sides of that scale, it's hard to do. And so we have to do that. And it doesn't matter who you are or where you are or what you do. The key to doing that is to develop what I refer to as systems of thought. And particularly as it relates to survival, you've got to have a system which basically gives you a set of priorities so that you know what's important. You know, the way I teach, and these are two things that I still, again, I robbed this from the United States military. This is nothing new. And again, it's not copyrighted, so we can talk about it and I can write about it. But what they refer to in the military as stop, I refer to as STOPA. And also the law of threes. Let me briefly get into that. These are systems of thinking for survival. Stop, or STOPA, is stop, think, observe, plan, and actively stay alive. So no matter what happens when we get stressed, hey, Sam Wade, what's up there? What's up, dude? Sam Wade's one of the dudes that I train with all the time. In STOPA, in stop, one of the things that we know when we started getting stressed, we have a increase in blood pressure, we have auditory exclusion, we have tunnel vision, we have all these physiological things that happen to us under stress. And the best way for the average person to overcome those things is to literally stop what they're doing. If you continue on, that's where you start making a lot of mistakes. And so the first thing you do, if you have time, is to literally stop, sit down, whatever you're doing, stop so you can think about it. That's what the T is. You think about it. And as it relates to survival and perspective, one of the first things that I like to think about is, what kind of things do I have on my body? What's in my pocket? What's in, if I have a pack on me, what's in my pack? What do I have on me right now that I can utilize to affect my survival? And what often happens for people is once they think about what it is that they have with them, they probably recognize that something's missing. Man, I wish I had this. Well, that's where you use the O. That's observe your surroundings. You literally look around your surroundings. It doesn't matter if you're a first responder that's responded to a flood in Houston, Texas, or if you are on a hiking trip and you got lost. You observe your surroundings and go, okay, I'm missing this. What in my environment looks like what it is that I'm missing? And that's where, if you're missing a shelter in a wilderness event, that's where you start building shelters from natural materials. But by golly, I'd rather carry a tarp, right? And so once we do the stop, think, and observe, we then make a plan. And this will come out a little bit more when we talk about tactics in a minute, where tactics is, one definition of tactics is working in a strategic manner with others to come to a common conclusion. Okay, that's just one definition of it. And so another thing that we often miss in the survival world communities is we have this tendency to think about survival as being a lone wolf activity. And let's just use me as an example. Me and my wife, and when my kids are grown and out of the home now, but when they were at home, it'd be easy for me to go to survival training because I have interest in that and go and do that. But what happens when a true, let's say this, for example, a pandemic happens like we're in the midst of right now, and nobody in your house is prepared but you. So what do? You need to do everything you can to communicate effectively with those that are in your home, those that you care about. And that all comes into the P, which is plan. You make a plan in your own mind if you're the leader, but you also communicate that plan effectively with others so that everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what to expect from one another. And then A of STOPA, stop, think, observe, plan, A is actively stay alive. One of the things that is easy to do is start to feel sorry for yourself. So one of the things that I did many years ago, I'm 51 now, but I spent 2 30-day sabbaticals out in the woods, living on my own, surviving with nothing but a knife. I walked in the woods with nothing but the clothes on my back and a knife. And I did it 2 different times. And the first time, it was springtime weather. Everything was fantastic. It was like a walk in the park. I'd spent a lot of time doing that sort of thing. Second time, I got a little cocky, and I went out and did it in a much harsher environment, and I nearly died. And I can tell you, one of the things that caused problems for me is I started feeling sorry for myself. And I felt really bad about my situation. I felt stupid that I'd put myself there, and I started beating myself down. And so I put A into STOPA as a means of teaching ourselves, hey, we need to actively stay alive in our mind so that so that we're not giving up, we're not giving in, sort of thing. Does all that make sense, what I'm saying? Anybody want to respond?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes tons of sense. We do have a question from Sam Bullig.
Yeah.
Says, what's a good way to practice these stress scenarios?
Oh, that's a good question, Sam, and I know Sam too. Thanks for jumping in here. All my supporters are coming in and being my boys today, which I appreciate. So, I'm always appreciative of the NRS community and appreciate you guys having me on. It's a wonderful thing. It's humbling. But one of the things I mentioned, that you can purposely stress yourself out every day, but it's not bad stress, is to work out. That is one of the best ways to purposely put yourself under physical and mental stress and overcome it. And when you overcome that, you again have built those neural pathways and taught yourself, hey, I got stressed out. I didn't want to add another plate to my deadlift today, but I did. I put a plate on each side and I cranked that puppy up and got it done. That was hard physically, that was hard mentally, but I got it done. Now, as far as adding to that concept of Sam's question is, what's a good way to practice these? You've got to understand there's a big difference between practice, training, and then actually getting it to a usable skill set. Practice, and this is a problem. I'll just go ahead and say it that way. This is a problem in the modern YouTube world that we live in, because people will do things on YouTube until they get it right, and then they put it out on a video. And you don't do things for survival until you get them right. You do things in practice until you cannot get them wrong. And a perfect example of me doing this and doing this and being humbled by it was many, close to 25, 30 years ago, when I was getting started doing some bow drill fire making. I've always been a fan of just lighters and ferro rods and stuff like that because it's easy. But when I started doing bow drill fire making to the point that I knew I wanted to teach people how to do it, I had done it all my life, but I knew that I wanted to get to the point where I could teach others to do it, which is a different animal in and of itself. I committed to doing 2 to 3 bow drill fires a day for a year. And then I felt like I could then publicly demonstrate that skill. And so that's exactly what I did. I mean, by the end of the year, I was taking my hearth board, my spindle, sticking it down in a bucket of water, leaving it overnight, leaving it out in the rain, picking it up, scraping it off, making bow drill fire. Dude, I was king. I was king to make a bow drill. And then I went to a school to demonstrate the skill, and I couldn't do it. I screwed up right in front of about 400 school kids. And now that is another thing that taught me, as I look at it critically and try to assess the situation, is, what the heck am I doing? How did I screw this up? Well, it was ego. It was my ego. One of the things I wrote again in my first book is the difference between confidence and cockiness. I think if I were to assess myself, I would say that's cockiness, what I did. I was really excited about showing these kids, and I was cocky about it, to be quite frank with you. So getting confident is another animal in and of itself. And you all know what I'm talking about. As I'm saying this, I'm sure people are thinking about people that are cocky. That's the people that, when I put those 200 stories together, it's the cocky people that died. It wasn't just idiots that made mistakes, that made mistakes when they went out. A lot of times, some of the people that died were very advanced practitioners of survival. There's one tragic story about a gentleman that was a very astute, very accomplished survival instructor that died on a vacation trip at a ski lodge. It was incredible what happened to this guy. And he just made a rookie mistake. He just went out for a small, short hike and it didn't bring his actual proper gear with him because he knew what he was doing, right? They were just taking a little walk. And it was just absolutely tragic. And so one of the things, to go back to, I got off on a tangent, to go back to Sam's original question, is that practicing, where you go out and do skills and then add in the training aspect of it. So the way I do that with our students is that if they're making fire, if I've got a class of 20 people teaching a class and somebody's just doing a fantastic job of building fire and they've been there, done that, usually I'll quote unquote break their arm or I'll cut off their thumb. I'll do something where I where in a scenario, I injure them and go, okay, you do that now, your left arm is broken. Can you accomplish that? I think one of the best, I'm not a big fan of survival TV. I've never been a big fan of survival TV, but one of the guys that did this exceptionally well was Les Stroud. You know, he would insert himself in these scenarios that came from the news. And I remember one in particular where he actually had, quote unquote, a broken arm. And so he tied his arm behind his back, and then he tried to accomplish all these things that he knew very well how to do exceptionally well. And because his arm was broken, he was having a lot of trouble. And so that's what I mean by going from practice to training. You've got to, if you can make fire really well, I just keep using fire building because a lot of people love to build fires. Build fires all seasons of the year, all different temperatures, all different types of weather. Thumbs broken, fingers hurt. You have to crawl to get supplies. You can't walk around and get supplies. Your leg's broken, so you have to crawl and find the materials. You can't reach up into trees to get dry materials because you're on the ground. You know, add that to your training regimen until, again, you practice it until you can't get it wrong. You don't just do practice until you get it right. You do practice until you get it wrong. You cannot get it wrong. And so that is the way, going back to Sam's original question, I would focus our attention on trying to add stressors in to enhance our ability. Does that make sense, gentlemen? Ladies? Yeah. So any more questions, guys, that I can get into before I jump into the next one? Hey, I'm looking at a couple of the comments too. Shane Adams, Shane Adams, good dude too. I like Shane. He mentioned being humble keeps you hungry and positioned to learn. Cannot agree with that more. Thanks, Shane, for throwing that in there. It's a beautiful thing. Sam Wade, how did you go from being in a t-shirt to being a cop all of a sudden? Look at you. Anyway, Shane Adams has got it right. Most people know Shane over at Essie Knives. Humility is huge, you all. It's absolutely huge. Having a humble nature to yourself opens you up to good situational awareness. It opens you up to good intelligence gathering, being able to see situations for what they are instead of what you yourself put onto them. And this is a big aspect, and this is not a topic of conversation today. Maybe we can come back and talk this another day, but it's a big part of what I teach as a tracking instructor, a student of tracking, and all things go along with it. If you're looking at a set of tracks, for example, you can't force what you think happened onto the track line. You have to allow the track line to inform you. And it's a good approach to life. It's a good approach to communication with your spouse at home, those that you work with, and as our buddy Sam here is going to work, as a law enforcement officer, if he's going out to work and he's forcing himself onto people, then he probably doesn't get a good information. So he uses his humble nature to gather the information that he needs to get to be able to do his job right. And it works for all of us in survival. I mean, if I force myself to realize, thinking that over there I'm going to find fire material, I could actually walk by fire material and miss it. And so that can be a problem.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that whole situational awareness thing that you were starting with, that it's always about being aware of what's going on so you don't overlook things.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's one of those things that, we do a lot of this. And again, this is sort of getting off onto a tracking subject matter, which is a little different, is you have to look at the situation for what it is. We as an animal, humans, we already went through the sections of the brain, but one of the things that we have a tendency to do is force our own conclusions on the environment, force our own conclusions upon what we're seeing around us. And the better method is to allow those things to inform us. And then here's the other part of this is utilize that neocortex, this beautiful thing that we have as humans, to critically consider it and look at it. Make critical decisions on the information that we are taking from what it is that we're surrounding us. And so it doesn't matter if we find ourselves in a pandemic, and we've talked about this a lot in our community, our Nature Reliance School community as of late. is that, and I'm sure when I say this, everybody, I'll probably get a lot of nods. How many of you all have been confused by the information that's coming out about what we should be doing? Should we wear a mask? Should we not wear a mask? Should we stay at home? Should we not stay at home? Should we do this? Should we not do this? And so one of the reasons that so many of us, and me included at times, are having trouble with this is that we have not spent much time in our country in particular teaching ourselves or others how to debate, logically consider things, and critically look at problems and find solutions. We just don't do that in our school system very well at all anymore as a whole, as our country. But the more time we spend being able to look at situations critically assess them so that we can make decisions off of them, the better off we are in a pandemic, for example, the better off we are when we look at a wilderness survival situation, or if we're looking at a situation, I'm not a big fan of bugging out, I'm a big fan of sheltering in, but if I'm in New Orleans and a hurricane is bearing down on me, son, I am bugging out. And so I need to have the mindset, skills, tactics, and gear, the mindset portion of that being, I've got to critically look at it and go, is this thing really going to happen? And if so, then move, dude, move off the X, go somewhere. Don't sit there and die. And so that is all part of, again, I've kind of gone back and forth at this point between mindset and skills, but being able to critically assess as part of that mindset and then apply that practice and training to our skills building as we move forward and get ready for it. What am I missing, guys, on the comments? Anything?
So far, so good on Facebook. So you kind of, like you said there, you covered some of the mindset and the skills. And so where does that line get drawn between skills and the, what did you call it? Tactics?
Yeah, here's the thing, guys. And it's a great question, Nick. But I call it a puzzle, and there's 4 puzzle pieces. And I'm sticking to that because I've been calling that for a long time. But the farther I get along, I think it's more of a survival soup. They're all intermingled in together to make that fine, fine stew that we should have been eating at Georgia Bushcraft this year, right? So, and we missed it. Man. But anyway, whatever ingredients that you put in your soup, which one do you like the best? Well, you probably like all of them, right? Mindset, skills, tactics, and gear are exactly the same. Mindset is important, skills is important. And to go back to your question, where is that line between skills and tactics? There's a huge blurring of the line. Now, I'll admit readily that I throw this word tactics in there because I had to come up with a way to communicate to others in my writing and in my instructional opportunities to how do we work on leadership and how do we work on team building, how do we work on our communication skills? And so tactics is the way that I do that. When I looked up the definition of tactics, there's actually several different definitions for tactics, but the one I seized upon for the writing that I do and the way that I teach was the strategic way that people work together to come to a common end. And so one of the things that we miss, and when I say we, I keep saying we because I'm definitely not perfect. I'm not the boom diggity when it comes to all this stuff I'm talking about. I'm a continually working and trying to get better at these things. Even as I speak to you all about them, I'm constantly trying to work on these things. But a big one is our lack of communication skills. And I'll give you a real world example. One of the stories that came out of my first book, I have a story at the beginning of every chapter that illustrates the importance of what I teach in that chapter. And so one of the stories I utilized in my first book on communication and team building was a tragic story where husband and wife and 2 children went out west from me into the Colorado Rockies, and they were going on a vacation. They had rented a Jeep, and they went off the side of the road because the guy didn't know how to drive. He was a computer guy, really good guy. Nice gentleman. He just didn't know how to drive a Jeep in snow in the Colorado Rockies, right? And so after they went off the road, there was a lot of infighting and a lot of bickering going back and forth between husband and wife. Okay. Sounds familiar, right? That can happen. And it's part of, I don't want to say that you're never going to argue with your spouse. We're going to have arguments. And that's, in my opinion, it's one of the ways that we know that we love that person, because we want to understand one another. I think it's a valuable part of relationship building. But what happened was that there was so much fighting happening inside the Jeep that this person decided that the way that they were going to fix it was they were going to go save the world and save everybody. The husband did. And he left. He got out of the Jeep and he was just going to walk back to town, which was 20 miles away or something like that. Well, he never made it. He died. I mean, he froze, died out in the middle of the snow. And when search and rescue found the family in the Jeep, they were very uncomfortable, but they were alive. Okay. So yes, if this gentleman had the mindset, skills, tactics, and gear, he may have been able to do self-rescue and leave. But really the catalyst to breaking down and the thing that caused him to lose his life was a lack of communication skills between him and his wife. And his cockiness rather than confidence. He did not have the ability to be even confident walking out in the outdoors. The guy was wearing penny loafers, walking through knee-high and thigh-high snow. And he thought he would be able to overcome that, okay? You can't overcome that. The elements will overtake you. And so he, again, the catalyst there was a lack of communication skills, a huge lack of communication skills on his part. And had they been able to nurture that relationship where they could figure out how to debate and argue back and forth and come to a conclusion, then he may have very well stayed in the Jeep and be alive today. But now those kids don't have their dad, that wife doesn't have her husband, that the parents don't have their son. And so this is a big part of learning how to communicate effectively with others. And the biggest hint that I can have to share with people is two things. I try to share this, and this sounds kind of kooky in a wilderness survival course, but it's two of the biggest things that I can try to impress upon you is, number one, focus on the situation, issue, or the behavior and not on the person. And so it's easy when you get into these arguments and these discussions and these back and forth is to call, well, you're an idiot, you're a dumbass, sorry. You use names and you talk down to people and you say, you made a stupid mistake, you should have never went down that road, you. Well, that's where we're focusing on the person rather than the situation that we're finding ourselves in. And a better method to handle that same situation is, it's really bad that we are lost here. What do you think that we can do to overcome this? And that way, what you're trying to do is find a solution to the problem without trying to demean. And I'll be frank with you, I have trouble with this like a lot of people. My wife is absolutely brilliant at it. She's taught me so much about how to be nurturing and loving. And I think it's one of the things that we can learn from other people if we don't have these skills. You know, case in point, we did this yesterday. My wife does the videography and editing for our YouTube channel and all that stuff. And there's times where I get on there and I am dumb as a rock. And I can't remember what I'm supposed to say. I can't, and I screw up my words, and I forgot what we're supposed to utilize as gear in the video and all this stuff. And my wife will come on and say, well, we'll just do it another day then. We can do this. We'll just do it another day. That's her focusing on the situation, the actual videography, because when it comes down to it, the stress that I'm putting on myself is problematic, and we can do that with one another as well. I hope that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions about what I mean by tactics at all? Did I cover everything? Yeah. Okay. That would be
quick nutshell summary of your 4 puzzle pieces again, just in case anybody's tuning in right now.
Okay. Anybody that's just coming in, hey, thanks for being here. Sorry you haven't been here yet, but this is going to be, I think, guys, this is going to be on Facebook and all that good stuff, so we can come back and watch it after it's not live. So make sure you come back in, because I've talked about a mound of stuff. But the 4 puzzle pieces are mindset, skills, tactics, and gear. And what we've talked about so far is mindset, skills, and mostly what I wanted to cover in tactics. And one last thing I wanted to cover in tactics, as far as it relates to communication and leadership skills, is the golden rule. Just treat others the way you would want to be treated. And, you know, when I say that, everybody's like, oh, Craig, it's all sunshine, peace, and love. Oh, let's cuddle rainbows together. It's not that as much as it is. And one of the things, and this is one of the ways that I learned this, okay, it was a life-changing moment for me when I was a student in a class. I was in a student in a class with a bunch of pipe hitters. We were doing room clearing, and the gentleman that was teaching the class, one of the first things that they taught us when we go into the room was how to set up. And there's several different ways to do this. So I'm only sharing one. I'm not teaching this at all. I'm just sharing with you what happened to me on this day. Is he went in the room and totally turned around and squared up to the threat. And one of the things that came when I say squared up, if the threat is in front of me here, he was like this instead of turned off or anything of that. He came into the room and was squared up on the threat. And the question was asked of him, why do you square up like that? And he said, because my team is coming in behind me and I'm going to be a bullet magnet for them. And I don't want them to get shot. And that was life-changing for me to see how that guy was willing to, because of his brothers that were coming in the door behind him, to basically be a bullet sponge so that they didn't get shot. That is, I don't know about you all, but that's humbling to me. Okay. So that was, if we take that mindset going into tactics, sometimes that means that we are sunshine, peace, and love. Oh, honey, it's not a problem. Don't worry. We can communicate in a way that we're softer. But sometimes that means we have to be direct and honest. Is that I want to be treated is that I want people to be honest with me. I don't want to be a situation where people are not honest with me. I'm not one of these guys that wants to be put on a pedestal. When I get what I have seen from people that are in positions of leadership, like I run Nature Reliance School and I get to do all these cool stuff with these high-speed guys and average ordinary citizens like me and you. One of the things that I've discovered by watching people that get put on pedestals is they end up believing their own crap, for number one, and that's terrible. And number two, they don't get good information because people are not willing to give them the information that they need because they're scared of them. There's a difference between fear and respect. And one of the ways that as a leader, if I'm saying I'm in a leadership position in a particular group, I want people to be honest with me so that we then can take those bits of information, assess them, critically think about them, and make decisions rather than get, puffed up and not get good information. I hope that makes sense as far as tactics is concerned.
Yeah, I think a lot of it there, even especially with the golden rule and what you were saying, ties direct into a tactfulness in how you deal with situations. Like you said, with the golden rule, if you want to be treated with respect, you got to treat other people with respect. And like your example, them showing that willingness of taking a bullet for you, I mean, that's a huge level of respect for the people behind them. And I think that's an awesome way of doing that. But yeah, if you want to be honest with people, there's still that tact involved to make sure that you do it in a way that is respectful. You can be respectfully, brutally honest.
Absolutely.
You can be condescending, disrespectfully, brutally honest. And there's a line there that a lot of people aren't sure how to maneuver.
Yeah, and it's difficult. I think one of the beautiful things about hanging around with people, I've done martial arts, for 30 years too. And one of the things that comes out of that sort of training as well is I don't want to be on the mat with a bunch of dudes that are soft. I want to be on the mat with a bunch of lions. I want to go, when I go in and learn how to do tactics, I want to be training with people that know how to be a lion and know how to affect change as far as it's related to self-defense. We can all go in and do sunshine, peace, and love and pretty stuff, and there's a time for that as far as fitness is concerned. But I'm going to learn how to defend against a choke when some dude is actually trying to choke my brains out. That way I can learn how to get past it. And I know that's just me applying what it is that I do. And that's I can only share from my experiences. But I don't want a guy that's kind of choking me. I want a guy that's going to really choke me. And if I can learn how to get out of that choke, then I'll know how to get out of chokes when and if they were to occur in real life. So that is pretty vital to me. So again, that's mindset, skills, and tactics. You guys want to dig into gear, or we got some questions to hit on?
I'm not seeing any questions regarding those. I think when we get to gear, Dominic has a question for you, and I can chime in once we get to the gear stuff.
Okay, I'll chat about it and then throw that at me. Okay, Dustin? All right, so gear's the last piece of this puzzle. And without a doubt, every one of us in this group here probably already know, maybe even all of us here are gear nerds. We all like gear. And the reason we like gear is because gear is the thing that has elevated us as an animal, okay? Meaning, we have these opposable thumbs and we have this cerebral decision-making and conscious decision-making. And it is these tools that we have, whether the tool is a knife, a tarp, or a backpack, that have helped push us down through eons of time. And so we are naturally attracted to gear. It's a very natural thing, and there's nothing wrong with it at all, okay? Where the attraction gets problematic is when you're so focused on the gear that if it's not there, you fall apart. And I'll give you an example from our training. We do this all the time, and if there's anybody in here that does training with us, they've seen me do this. I'm kind of giving some secrets away, right? So one of the things that we do at the end of our, like a basic survival class, is we always put the people through a scenario. I'm not going to tell you what that scenario is. You got to come to class to get it, okay? But one thing that I do, I will, every single class, pick out the biggest gear nerd in the class. The guy that's got the perfect pack, he's got the knives, he's got the tarps, he's got it all. And as soon as that scenario starts, I take all of it away from him and tell him he can't use it. Because I've been teaching him or her to utilize that all weekend long in a class. And I've had grown men literally sit down on the ground and want to cry because they're like, well, I don't get to use my cool knife and blah, 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 blah. And what do? Well, dude, go back to your training. Go back to what it is that you know, mindset, skills, and tactics. Because what happens is, and I ran into this in a gunfighting class, it's been a decade ago, where in this particular class, one of the exercises is you come up on target and the instructor said, all right, drop your weapon. And we had to just drop our weapon and let it hit the ground, okay? So there were guys that came up on target and they're holding a $2,000, $3,000 pistol. And they're like, I'm not dropping my weapon. I'm not doing that. And that is bad. And here's why this is bad. If you are so keyed into a piece of equipment that you think that your life depends upon that piece of gear, then what happens when it is gone? It's very mentally debilitating. And again, that doesn't mean that I don't take gear with me. I take gear with me every time I go outdoors, every single time. But I also have things in my back pocket of my noggin to know what to do if I don't have it. How can I affect making cordage if I don't have paracord? If I don't have a knife, how can I, like yesterday, I taught a fire building class on video. I didn't use a knife the whole freaking time. I just went out in the woods and gathered stuff, and I realized, oh crap, I was supposed to teach some safe, this is for kids. I was supposed to teach some safe tool handling methods in the midst of this class, and I didn't. I didn't use a knife the whole time because in my mind, something such as a knife, although it's an incredibly useful tool, is a precious tool. I don't want to use it unless I have to in survival. And so I take good care of it. I don't abuse it. It's another thing. We can get off on a subject there. I'm not going to get started. I'll piss a bunch of people off if I do that. So, but with that said, you want to take care of your tools so that you have them, but not be so dependent upon them that you don't have the mindset or the skills available to you to get past them if you don't have that gear. That's very important. So what was this question, Dustin, somebody had?
Yes, sir. So from Dominic, he says, what are the primary tools needed in order to practice self-reliance on a daily basis, as in your EDC?
Okay, so I mentioned earlier the law of threes briefly. I didn't get into much detail about it. I talked about STOPA, but I didn't really get into law of threes. But law of threes is a very general understanding of what we need in survival. It's a way of understanding our priorities. you can't live more than 3 minutes without blood flow and oxygen flow. You can't live more than 3 hours without maintaining your core body temp. Can't live more than 3 days without water. Can't live more than 3 weeks without food. Can't live more than 3 months without human assistance. Now, with all that said, that is very, very, very general. It's not; those are not absolutes. But what that does tell us is what are our priorities. Case in point, when the pandemic started, people were running around buying groceries and toilet paper. That's got to be the dumbest thing I've seen in a long time. If you don't already have stores of toilet paper and you already don't have groceries to last you at least a month, then you are making a huge mistake at your house. That's a huge mistake. Okay. And so who has to wipe their butt in the next week? You can get away with it. If you've never been in that position of not wiping your butt in a week, then try it sometime. You will be okay. You might get a few dingleberries and it'll be awkward for a bit, but you will live. It's true. So these are things that we need to be able to understand what our priorities are. And so to go back to his question directly, I look at it that way. If I don't take care of myself in the first 3 minutes, I'm going to die. So what kind of things can kill me in 3 minutes? If my blood is not flowing and my oxygen is not breathing, then I'm going to die. So I have the skills, that's both basic first aid skills as well as trauma first aid skills, like stop the bleed or TCCC or something of that nature. If you don't know what those are, ask me and I'll go into detail on those. But I also carry a tourniquet and hemostatic agent with me every time I walk out the door, because I also carry a firearm for self-defense. And because I carry a firearm for self-defense, if I'm the type of person that might very well use a firearm to put holes in people, there's probably somebody on the other side of my gun trying to put holes in me or somebody that I care about. So one of the last things that I want to do is absolutely bring harm to people. I've trained people how to hurt and bring harm to people for a long time, but I don't like that. I abhor violence. I'm not a fan of violence at all, but I'm a big fan of taking care of myself and my family. So as far as carrying a firearm, if I bring a firearm out, or if somebody brings out a knife or something of that nature and cuts me, shoots me, then I want to have the gear to be able to take care of them. And one of the pieces of gear is the tourniquet. I mean, as far as carrying firearms is concerned, you're more likely to save a life with a tourniquet than you are a firearm, unless you're law enforcement or military. I mean, there's a good chance I'm going to come across a wreck someday and somebody's going to be bleeding out. And I could slap a tourniquet on them and actually save their life. And so I carry that with me every day. So think about it from that perspective. That's the kind of gear that I'm going to carry with me. So I do carry things to keep me safe. Now, as far as what comes after that, what comes after that, and that is core body temperature. So I always go out the door. First thing, I always check the weather before I go out the door every single day. I'm actually looking at the weather 2 or 3 days out every single day. That's because I'm survival minded and I'm a tracker. And everything in tracking is based upon weather patterns on the ground in particular. So I'm constantly monitoring the weather. And so I'm going to wear the clothes that are going to get me to and from wherever it is that I need to go. And if I don't have those clothes on, I'm going to take them with me. Because these clothes that we wear, that's our first line of defense for shelter. Vitally important. Now, I also do like a lot of people. I have a ferro rod that I keep on my keychain. And I have a basically what most people would call a go bag. I just call it a safety bag. The stuff that I take with me that goes in my vehicle every single day, no matter where I'm going. You know, and that's going to, what I like to do is I like to have the items on me, on my person all day, every day. They're going to help me be able to be okay. And then I like to have the items necessary really close to me that I can live an uncomfortable night outside and not die. And so beyond that, that's what I would call tier 2 gear. Tier 3 gear is the stuff that I'm going to take so I can be comfortable outside. And so I look at it as tiers of gear. EDC, going back to his original question, are the things that keep me safe in that 3 minutes. Okay. I also have a cell phone that I can utilize for communication. You know, these are all things that I have with me and on me every day. So who has a question for me or comment? Anything I can address?
I'll do a quick follow-up just on that, on your EDC. Do you actually carry a notebook to record your, let me make sure I get this right from Dominic, to record your process?
I don't in my EDC, Dominic. It's a great question, but I'm a big fan of notebooks. Yeah. Here's my desk. This is from January of this year. These are my notebooks that I have utilized to write down the things that I felt are important about the things that I'm writing to people, the things that I'm doing personally to better myself, the things that I'm putting out there online, so that I'm taking notes about. And here's what I'll give you a perfect example. Go back to Dominic's question, is that when I get done doing this today, as soon as we get offline here, I'm going to take notes on what I thought went well and what things I didn't think well. I did it the last time that I worked with Casey when we did the thing for Georgia Bushcraft. And so I reviewed those notes before I got on today so that hopefully I can continue to improve. This is a whole new process for me, trying to communicate effectively on a Zoom meeting. So it's difficult for me because I like being face-to-face with people in the outdoors. That's where I do things. But if I don't take notes, then it's hard for me to remember everything that I've done. So I'm constantly taking notes. I'm a big fan of Evernote. I have Evernote on my phone, so I take a lot of notes in Evernote as well. And so that way I can share notes with other people if we're doing something together. And I'm a huge fan of a notebook. But I don't carry that with me every day. To get back to his question, what I use every day with me, EDC, is Evernote on my phone.
We got Bo Harger down here in the Houston area asking if you ever do on-site classes outside of Kentucky.
All the time. I travel quite a bit, and I go anywhere where somebody wants to get 10 or 15 people together and wants me to train them. I used to do quite a bit of travel, and I kind of backed off of it for a little while, and now it seems like I'm back into it again. It comes in waves. Everything goes in waves. And so a lot of people are probably recognizing right now, I'm not a well-known survival instructor, what I would consider a well-known survival instructor. I spend a lot of time. I'm very different than most guys. Some of the best things that I do, I don't tell people about because they're not necessarily secrets of the trade, but they're just things that are, there's a lot of things that I do that if I put them out there and like, oh, Craig, I didn't realize you taught those guys. Probably people would think I'm really cool. But because of operational security, I can't talk about some of the things that I do. And so it looks like, I'm, just to put it succinctly, I'll travel anywhere that anybody wants me to train. That's what I'm all about. I love going anywhere. I'll put it that way.
Do you have favorite environments that you prefer training in or that you won't train in?
Yeah, I'm definitely a Kentucky boy, which is Eastern Woodlands. I'm also a master naturalist here in the state of Kentucky, certified master naturalist. So I understand Eastern Woodlands as far as, soil, water, plants, trees, all that kind of good stuff. But I recognize that I am terrible. I mean, if you put me in the desert of Arizona where like Tony Nestor teaches classes, then I'm a lost ball in high weed, son. I mean, I understand some of those same principles are going to be the same, Stopa and Law of Threes, right? But I would look like a doofus out there. I would love to train with Tony out there. That kind of mindset. I recognize I have a limit to what it is that I can do. I'm not an end-all, be-all kind of guy. I don't know it all. I don't. I'm constantly trying to learn. But Eastern Woodlands, mixed hardwood forest, then I feel pretty comfortable in that type of environment.
And to follow up with that, Craig, Michael's asking, did you attend any schools prior to starting your own, and what do you take and leave from them?
Yeah, I attended a bunch. At some point in time, there's too many to mention actually, but go to my website, naturereliance.org, and look at the About menu item, and you'll see the instructors, and you'll see a list of the schools that I've attended. It's about this long. Okay, but let me tell you why I did what I did and how I did it. And I'll try to get into some of the specifics of some of the schools that I went to. I grew up doing this stuff as a way of life. Okay, and most of what I was taught to me by either my dad or my uncles. And a lot of what they taught me and how they taught me was what I would call through osmosis. I was just with them when we did it. It wasn't like we stopped and said, okay, it's time for instructional time, Craig. This is how you're going to load a muzzleloader. They just loaded a muzzleloader and I watched it, and then they handed me a muzzleloader and told me to load one, right? Or they did a bow drill fire and I had to watch it, and then I had to try to basically repeat what I saw. And what I realized later on is that if I was going to have a school, one of the things that I was missing was the ability to teach people that were strangers to me. And that is huge. Okay. Now, teaching my son, my daughter, those that are close to me that I have experience in daily life with, that's not a problem, because I know them. And I know their idiosyncrasies, and I know what kind of things they're good at, what kind of things they're not good at, and how to help them learn. But if I've got a person walking into class and they're a stranger, how do I overcome the difference between us being strangers and help them instruct? So what I did is I went around and trained with other instructors to see how they did it. Really just seeing how their instructional methods, and there's some good ones and there's some terrible ones out there. I mean, there were some that I went to that I thought were really good. One of those was Richard Cleveland from Earth School. Fantastic instructor, very down-to-earth gentleman. I trained with Tom Laskowski. Two of the guys that helped me with primitive skills, Doug Meyer, Johnny Faulkner. These are guys that do primitive skills every single day of their life. These are guys that really helped me out tremendously. And again, there were a host of others that I've been to that I walked away and thought, that's what I don't want to do. And so that was also very valuable training, to go to these other schools and see, okay, number one, I don't want my school to turn out like that. And I don't want to turn out like that guy or that gal. And so I tried to critically assess why they were doing things the way they did and avoided those as best I can. Okay. And I say this all the time, but those of us at Nature Reliance School, me and the other instructors at our school, we spend as much time learning how to and studying how to teach people as we do what we teach people. And so when you come, let's say, for example, and I'm not going to name any names, and I'm not trying to talk negatively about another school. I'm not going to do that. But when you come to a class with us, we're going to teach for a weekend, and we're probably not going to use our notebooks much to teach you, because we know the material. I don't have to open up a notebook and go, these are the steps that I teach in a survival class. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have reference notes myself to make sure that I'm making sure everybody gets what I want them to get. And in the midst of a class, I might get off on a tangent like I have today, right? And forget that I forgot to do this. But I'm not a fan of having a notebook in front of me the whole time and teaching from it. That tells me, if I'm looking at that tells me instructor doesn't know the material. I want the instructor to be able to speak to me. I mean, you told me to go, an hour ago? And I've been going for an hour. And I could still go for a lot longer without any notes. And I'm not saying I'm better, more smarter, or anything in nature, better anything, but I've talked about this stuff a lot, so I feel comfortable about it. And I spend a lot of time learning how to communicate with people in such a way that, hey, I don't know you, but I can communicate with you. And it goes back to basic leadership. I've studied a lot of leadership. I spent a lot of time reading. One of the creek steward is somebody I haven't trained with, but he's fantastic at marketing, right? I mean, everybody recognizes that creek steward is probably one of the best marketers in the survival outdoor world, right? And one of the things that he impressed upon me many years ago was that I need to be reading as much as I'm writing. And I do that. And I had been doing that, but it was just, I'm listening to him going, okay, that's validation for what I'm already doing. So I spend time every day writing. I spend time every day reading. Sometimes it's only 5 minutes. Really. I don't have much time other than that. Today is one of those days. I'm going on hour 4 on a camera talking to people today. So, I mean, it's one of those things where I don't have much time today, but I will commit to that because I get smarter that way. And I kind of got off on a tangent on his question, but there you go.
Well, there's tons of other stuff that And I think this whole theory of the series that we're doing is just to kind of keep these little bite-sized, hour-long chunks of information. But that at all does not mean that you wouldn't be invited back to hopefully continue to expound on that. And so we might have to cut off some of the questions and follow up another time, or even just maybe DM you directly or follow up with some other questions that some people had that we weren't able to ask on this one.
Yeah, let's just send them Craig's way. If you got more questions that you get a chance to ask or a chance to respond to, then just send him a message directly. Craig, tell them where they can find you.
naturereliance.org is our website. That's the home for everything that we do. And so that has our online classes, that has our outdoor hands-on workshops, as well as the online coursework. We do a lot of coursework online through outdoorcore.com. That's another collaboration with Creek Stewart. And so you can find all that on our website, though, at naturereliance.org.
You have any social media accounts?
Yeah, we've got it all. Here's a big one. If you all have listened to anything that I've said today and liked it or appreciated it, then do me a solid and go like us on Instagram. It's Nature Reliance. My wife oversees our Nature Reliance Instagram. She's the one that does. She's a photographer. She's done the photography for 2 of our books. She would love to see us get to 10,000, and I bet you all can help me do that. So you all will make my wife very happy if you can help us get to 10,000 on Instagram. So. But you can find that on the website, naturereliance.org. I do want to address one question I'm seeing right here that Dominic asked, though, real quick. What's your opinion? Because we got to do something that's a little bit controversial, right? Just so people watch and people talk about it. What's your opinion of SWAT? It's not as good as true tourniquet, but it's very compact. Would it suffice? No, that is a piece of garbage, and you should never rely on a SWAT as a tourniquet. That's my opinion. And I'll tell you why. I've been a good guy that's been shot in a lot of TCCC training, meaning I'm oftentimes called on by local law enforcement to be a cop that gets shot, and they have to come in and fix me. And the reason they pick me is because typically one of the things that happens in a situation like that is the person that's being fixed fights an officer, and I know how to fight people without hurting them. And if they fight me, I know how to defend myself without getting hurt. And SWATs are terrible. Putting a SWAT on somebody that is combative at all. You want to have a different tourniquet. I'm a big fan of soft tees, Special Operations Forces tourniquet wide, or CATs, combat application tourniquets. Not a big fan of SWATs. Good for a dog, good for a kid probably, but not for an adult. There's our controversy for the day, boys.
All right. Well, I'm sure we can get into more of that too with other tourniquets and stuff that are out there. But yeah, we appreciate having you come chat with us for an hour, Craig, and hopefully you'll get some more people pushed your way. And yeah, it's awesome to get to introduce people to you, your methods, and your school. So hopefully this is a continued thing, and it's just a big shared community of information. This whole skill series live is intended, like Dustin said, just to kind of get these tidbits of information out there, really little teasers that people can learn what they're interested in and just branch out from there. And it's all about sharing that knowledge. So we appreciate you taking your time today to come share your knowledge with us.
Hey, I would just like to back that up. I mean, I didn't have to, everybody that's listening and watching, I don't have to be here. I'm here because the guys from Wazoo and Georgia Bushcraft asked me to be here. And I can't thank you guys enough for letting me be here. It's very, very thankful. I know that I'm here because of you all. Appreciate it. And I absolutely love the fact that you are community building in this world that we live in. And so keep doing that. That's tactics, you all. That's the mindset skills tactic. That's the tactics portion of it. You all are doing it, and I really appreciate it. So thumbs up for me on that. Keep doing what you're doing. It's vitally important to our culture and our society as a whole. It's vital. Thank you for doing that.
Awesome. We really appreciate it, Craig. And looking forward to see you in the fall if everybody gets back to normal at our gathering.
Sounds good, boys. Sounds good.
But,
all right.
Cool, man. Stay safe out there.
See everybody else in the next live video.
Yep. See you guys Thursday, same time, 2:00. And Craig, we'll need to have you come back here sometime soon. So
That's good. I'm ready anytime, boys.
awesome, guys. Well, I appreciate it. I'm logging off, but thank you everybody for watching, and hope everybody stays safe, and we'll see you later this week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.